This is episode 33 of the Inland Empire Workers' Compensation Lawyer live stream podcast. My name is attorney Alexander Napolin. I'm joined by my co-host, attorney George Abuado. And on this episode, we're discussing law enforcement officers. What is a law enforcement officer for workers' compensation purposes? And also, what additional benefits do law enforcement officers get under California workers' compensation law? So the labor code, the law that governs who and who is not a law enforcement officer, okay, defines law enforcement officer in many different ways, and a lot of different people can qualify. So that's the first part of our discussion. Then later in this video, we're going to get into what additional benefits you get if you're a law enforcement officer under workers' compensation. So George, who's the biggest group that qualifies as a law enforcement officer, the ones we all know are law enforcement officers?
I would say police, right?
Right, active duty police officers.
Active duty police officers. We see them every day. We see them in patrol cars. We might get nervous if they're behind us.
Right.
But, you know, they're out there to protect and to serve, right, is what we wish to believe in. And they're out there helping the community every day. When they're out there, they could be called to several different types of disturbances, and that can put them in the line of fire, right? They could put them into a dangerous position where any type of injury could happen. They could be running behind a perpetrator or someone that they suspect is committing some illegal activity. They could twist their ankle. They could trip. They could fall. They can get into the altercation once they catch the person. So it opens up them up to a lot of regular type of injuries that you might sustain on a type of job. But later on, we'll discuss on different types of injuries that are presumptive injuries that they could also face. Either way, these men and women of law enforcement are out there every day protecting us. So they are the ones that we see the most, police officers. What are the ones that are we talking about, Alex? If it's not just police officers in uniform every day, what other officers are we talking about?
So it's not just active duty police officers. It's also, off duty police officers. So another group of people is active duty police officers when they're attempting to apprehending a suspect while they're off duty, which I guess they can do.
Right.
Now, that might not be an illegal arrest. It might be an illegal arrest, or it might be a legal arrest. The labor code doesn't say whether or not it's legal or not. It just says, hey, if you're off duty, you could potentially become entitled to workers' compensation benefits as an active duty police officer would if you're doing some police work while you're off duty.
What about if I'm out, I'm not a police officer, but I see something wrong and I do a citizen's arrest? Does that qualify me for police officer benefits?
It could if you're injured.
Okay.
While you're conducting that arrest. Now, it doesn't mean that you could have arrested the person. It just means that you were doing a type of law enforcement service.
Okay.
As an off duty. And this goes for if you're a volunteer for a police officer who has conscripted you almost, said, hey, I would like you to help me apprehend this person.
Wow. So if you're out and about and a crime happens and the police officer is trying to apprehend someone and you actually help or you ask to help in some sort of fashion and you're injured, you qualify for benefits as well?
Right. Well, the law specifically states that the peace officer must request your help.
Right.
But that's kind of it's a blurry kind of area there. Most of the cases go towards, hey, if someone's helping, they're going to get workers' compensation benefits if they're injured.
Right.
And you could be injured in a number of different ways. It could be in the actual physical, restraint of the suspect, or it could just be tripping and falling while you're going over to help the police officer.
Right.
It's that simple.
Wow.
But, there are situations where, if the police officer's engaging in a, mutual combat with someone else at the bar,
yeah,
then maybe, they called it, they were mad dogging someone and someone decided to fight them, and then the police officer gets into a fight with someone. Under that circumstance, there's going to be no protection for that police officer under workers' comp. That's outside of the course and scope.
And it makes sense, right? Because we have something along the same lines with regular people that are not police officers that get into fights while they're at the job. If you're the one that caused the fight and maybe you are the first one to hit someone, that's called the initial aggressor, you get no workers' compensation rights. So same thing here with cops. If they're out and about and there's a mutual combat situation, which means that they're not trying to stop a crime. Maybe they got into an altercation with someone and both people decided to fight. That's mutual combat. Then they're not eligible for workers' compensation benefits. Is that correct, Alex?
Yeah, that's correct. I mean, every case is a case-by-case basis. So one of the reasons why we're having this discussion is because George and I represent police officers. So if you are out there, you're a police officer, you're a family member of a police officer, you're looking for information. Maybe you were volunteering helping a police officer. Maybe you're a volunteer officer. Maybe you're an active duty officer who got hurt, or maybe you were off duty, but you believe that you might have workers' compensation rights. You need to dial the injury helpline at 844-984-8414 and request a free consultation. We can give you that legal advice that you need, because there are more categories than we've discussed now. What we've discussed today is just a general overview. So with that said, we're going to discuss a little bit about what you get if you're injured and you are a law enforcement officer. So you get all of the workers' compensation benefits that you normally get. Okay, you can go back and look through all of the videos that we've done. There's tons of good information, but there are some differences. Okay, under Labor Code Section 4850, which is the leave of absence benefits for law enforcement officers and for a lot of other types of state workers. And we go through those in some of our other videos. But for law enforcement officers, you get more benefits. What are they, George? What do you get?
Well, you get a full year of pay, and that's a lot.
If you need it, if you're injured.
If you're injured.
Up to a full year.
Up to a full year, you're right, Alex. So just like benefits, obviously a doctor has to certify you, and you have to be you have to be put out of work. But if you are and you need it, you get a full year of pay, a full pay. That means that whatever your gross amount was on your check, that's what you get monthly as your benefits. That means that it's completely different than the other benefits we spoke about before for people that are not police officers.
Right.
They get 66.66% through temporary disability benefits. This is up to a full year of full pay.
Yeah, if you're just a regular worker, you're not one of these law enforcement officers,
right,
then you're going to get only 2/3 of your gross pay. And we discussed in episode number 29, put a link to that right up here, and you can watch that video if you want to learn more about your health benefits and what happens if you've been off for an extended period of time, like more than a couple months, more than 3 months. To your health benefits, if you're a regular worker, your employer doesn't necessarily have to cover those. But if you're a law enforcement officer, under Labor Code Section 4850, all benefits, fringe benefits, health benefits, that's included in that full pay.
Full pay for 1 year.
That's the leave of absence benefits. No loss of salary.
Right.
And I think the background for the legislature is, hey, these are police officers, these are law enforcement officers. They're putting their lives at risk. This section also applies to firefighters and other dangerous public servants that are engaging in dangerous professions, dangerous services to the public. We don't want to discourage them from engaging in those dangerous activities for the public. So it does meet the constitutional standard of having a basis to provide these extra benefits to law enforcement.
Right. And you mentioned this, but it's important to note again that this includes all benefits. So your health care benefits, your insurance benefits that you were receiving while you were employed. If you go back to the video where we spoke about this for regular employees, those get cut off. Depending on the policies of your employer, depending on what they have in their handbook, you could lose your health benefits, which is your health insurance, if you're not working a certain amount a week. But with police officers and people that qualify for this, they get that for that full year. They don't have to worry about their benefits being cut off, whether their health benefits, insurance benefits, or otherwise. They get all that for up to a year if it's necessary.
Yeah, so your doctor still has to be writing you off. So if you're a police officer, you're an active duty peace officer, you're a volunteer police officer, and you got hurt, you need to have a doctor. That's what we discussed on episode number 32, those delays in getting doctors that need to write you off of work. So go ahead and check out that link to that video right up there. You can learn more about that discussion that we had. Give us a call if you need help. If you're an active duty police officer who's been injured, or if you've been off duty, you have a strange situation, you need to discuss it with a lawyer because you get these extra benefits under workers' compensation if you qualify.
Right.
You could lose them though. There are certain situations where you might go back to work early. You might get better from your condition within a month or two,
Right.
or you might quit your job and move on to another job. Right. And so if you resign, the 4850 special benefits go away. If you collect them for more than a year or for up to the year, then you just get regular temporary disability benefits after that if you still can't work.
What if you get fired, Alex? I mean, you talked about quitting, right? And that makes sense because if you quit and now you're working in a different job, well, you're working in a different job, right? And it's completely done. But what if you get fired? Is that the same?
Well, if you get terminated for a reason that's unrelated to your injury, and you're already receiving your 4850 pay benefits, the appeals board will generally keep those undisturbed. They'll basically say, hey, the employer still has to pay, and that's to discourage employers from just terminating employees to get rid of this high pay that they have to potentially give the law enforcement officer.
Yeah, because I mean, you really have to think about it. It is high pay. It's a full gross pay that you get to keep, no taxes taken out. So, I mean, if you get that for a year while you're recovering, that's a lot of money that they have to spend. So, in order to prevent, these police stations, these police departments to fire someone in order to save their budget, then even if they get fired for something that's not related to their industrial injury, they get to keep up to that full year of benefits that we described, right?
I think there might be exceptions to that.
There's always exceptions to everything.
But generally speaking, yes. Yeah. If you have 4850 pay and they're telling you that it's being terminated, you definitely need to discuss with an attorney, because also all of these benefits that you're getting, the permanent disability award that you receive, is potentially going to affect the determination of the retirement board. And you're going to have to potentially ask for retirement based upon some disabilities. And once you get that permanent and stationary status, that is going to determine what happens to you next. Once you get that permanent and stationary status, your employer starts to provide you with permanent disability advances. If you're at that stage right now and you don't have a lawyer, it's time to call one, because you're not going to be able to continue with your 4850 extended leave of absence benefits if you're already receiving a permanent disability payment from your workers' compensation claim. And we've discussed QMEs on this channel. We discussed them last video as well. So if you're an injured law enforcement officer out there, it's time to give the injury helpline a call at 844-984-8414 for a free and confidential case evaluation. Remember that what we've discussed so far, it's general in nature only. It's meant to help you understand if you are a law enforcement officer and what your rights are. But you need to call a lawyer to really determine what the specific actions are that you need to take to enforce those rights.